So what I would say to anybody, and nurses especially, because we're talking about nurse coaching, is to, if you don't feel like enough, if you feel like you need something more, start talking to someone about why you feel that way and really cultivate a sense of awareness. And you're not going to find the answer outside yourself. Okay.
Mm.
You're not going to find the answer outside yourself. You're going to have to go inward and find out what is leading me to the decisions that I am making right now that seem to bring me to a place that is uncomfortable or that is not aligned with who my true self is.
Welcome, everyone, to the Integrative Nurse Coaches in Action podcast. My name is Nicole Viano. I am your host, and I'm also a board certified integrative nurse coach. And I am super jazzed right now because today we have a very special guest. I have been watching her through her whole career and enjoying all of the passion and love and just devotion that she brings to nursing and to life in general. And I would love to welcome Joanne Turnier. She is a board certified health and wellness coach. She's a board certified holistic nurse. And she's at the point in her career where titles no longer matter. She gets to do what she wants to do when she wants to do it, just sharing her beautiful love and passion for holistic nursing and holistic well-being and all the great things that she's doing. And I'm just really, really happy that we all get to spend this time together with Joanne. So welcome, Joanne.
Oh, thank you so much. And I'm so happy to be here with you and to share this time. I love talking to you and seeing you. So thank you.
Well, we're going to be soaking up all of your wisdom and excited.
Well, I don't know about that, but we'll see.
We'll see. We'll see, sure. So, Joanne, we love to start off a little bit looking down history lane. And we'd love to know the story of why you decided to become a nurse.
Oh my gosh. It's funny because I became a nurse later in my life. When I was a little girl, I wanted to be a nurse. And I was going back and forth between being a theater major and a registered nurse. And my aunt, who was my mother's youngest sister, we were like 12 years apart because my mom's family was huge. She said, "Why do you want to be a nurse for?" She said, "All you're going to do is change bedpans." And I was like, oh my goodness. So it turns out that I became a theater major. Okay. And even though I love the theater and I loved that type of work, it didn't jive with me. What happened was I needed to work full time. So I quit college to work full time. And I wound up working as a waitress. And then I wound up going to medical assistant school because that's what I could afford at the time. Right. So I went to medical assistant school. I became a lab technician through that schooling. And I felt very at home in the medical field. It turns out, moving forward, a number of years later, we had some career changes in my married life. And my husband said, "Why don't you always wanted to be a nurse? Why don't you go back to school?" And of course, my response back then was, "Oh, I don't think I could do it. I have the children. I'm not smart enough. I'm not," all those things that we kind of tell ourselves. So he said, "All right, listen, just go one day a week, go on a Saturday." He said, "And I'll stay home with the kids and just take one class." So I did. I took anatomy and physiology for a whole year, and I did very well in it. And I began my journey into nursing. I was the first class that graduated as an evening class with an associate's degree. And then back then they allowed nurses to start a position without a license. You could work under your preceptor's license. And they allowed us to start in a specialty. And so the local hospital here, it was a county hospital, had 3 positions in neonatal intensive care, believe it or not. And for me, I mean, I loved the babies, and I loved the challenge. So the three of us from the same class went into the hospital, and for 12 weeks, without being board certified as an RN, we worked with preceptors and we learned, and it was amazing. When I look back on that part of my life, I felt like I wasn't working. I was just having such a good time. And, neonatal intensive care is not always very easy. First of all, the unit is isolated from the rest of the hospital, all right? And the baby can't tell you a thing. So you have, your patient can't tell you a thing. Your assessment skills really have to you have to hone in on them. And also, you're not only treating the patient, but you're treating the family. And that was the foundation for the rest of my nursing career. And I think what that called forth for me was this integrative, holistic approach, because, you're dealing with the whole family. You're dealing with someone who can't tell you how they feel or where it hurts, or, so you're pulling out all of the things that you know or don't know and look up to see how can you really, give this little baby and their family the best possible care, which comes from really inside of each nurse. This skill, yeah, but there's that other component that is extremely dynamic and is constantly changing. And I think that really was a beautiful way for me to find out more about myself, to learn, and to have the camaraderie of a neonatal ICU unit. It was really amazing. And I have beautiful memories of that time. So that's where I started.
I love this story. And I'm also imagining you as a theater major.
Oh, God. Well, I always loved the theater. My mother's side of the family, that were all singers and played an instrument. And, I love the theater. And that was kind of an escape for me as a kid, because, sometimes life wasn't so easy as a kid. So it was, we, as children, we used to put on shows for the neighborhood and things like this. We were like the Little Rascals. I mean, I'm dating myself now, but, I always loved the theater, and I still do. And actually, both my granddaughters are in the theater. They love it. They, study music, and they love it. And I love going to the theater. So, it's still there for me, but my path, I took a different path.
Yes.
But not to say that you couldn't use some of those skills in nursing, right? Because it's
Right.
creative, it's very creative, I think.
Absolutely. I'm thinking, of all of that and just understanding and all the skills that you gain from learning about theater and, acting, whether it's acting or music or dancing or whatever, all of that teamwork is also part of theater. And
Yes. And life, because are the tragedies and the comedies. Yes.
Mm.
So what do we learn from those? And when you're a nurse, you see both sides of life. We are there when someone is born, usually there's a nurse present, right? And we are there, and the last person they see when they pass on and transition into death, a physical death anyway, I believe. But I think they have a lot of commonalities, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. And then so after the NICU, did you move on to something else, or how did that go?
I did. So I didn't really want to move on to anything else, but I was working nights. And I have to tell you, I remember my sister coming over one morning, and she looked at me, she went, "Oh, you look like a porcupine, or you look like what are they? The badgers with the dark circles under their eyes,
Oh,
a raccoon." I guess she was calling me all kinds of animal names. And I was like, but I didn't sleep. I had little ones, and it was hard for me to sleep. So what happened was, there was a position that was posted at the county institution, and I had some lovely friends in the neonatal, and one of them was Barbara. And Barbara was the joker of the team, okay? And they used to call me Mother Cabrini, believe it or not.
Okay.
Lovingly. And because they called me Mother Cabrini, because when I was in neonatal ICU, I noticed that when we saved babies and they grew and they went home, that was great. But we weren't so good at, interventions that surrounded the sadder stories where the babies were very sick and they passed away and their families were just left, or they had genetic issues. And I wondered, how are we addressing the grief, this profound loss in the unit? How are we prepared as nurses and other clinical staff to create an environment that allows one to grieve or one to feel cared for while they're grieving? So what happened was I created, along with my colleagues, a bereavement program. We created booklets, and a lot of times we looked up the literature. We worked with the volunteers. They bought us memory boxes. And this was back in the 90s when this really wasn't being done so much. And I remember I had guest speaker come, a nurse who had lost a child who was a nurse. She came and told her story. And after that, we were all so moved that I decided to go to the department head for GYN and ask for money. And what I did was, they told me he was so cheap that he wouldn't give us any money. And I was so moved by this nurse's story and knew the importance of the grief process, or giving resources, or, being there. And I went to him and he gave me money, and I couldn't believe it. And we purchased memory boxes. The volunteers had folks who knitted little hats and sweaters, and we were able to expand that program to miscarriages and stillbirths and, and then in pediatrics. But after that was done, this new position came along, and it was a day position, an 8 to 4, and my children were school age. So they said, Mother Cabrini, you have to, and this is just what they said, okay? You have to interview for this. And I said, no, I love what I do. I'm not. Well, it's a day job. It'll be better for you. And it's a family support nurse. And that's what you do, because if a baby passed away, in the literature at that time, it said the mom should, or dad, we should offer them to see the baby, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the nurses would go in and say, they don't want to see him, sorry, and I would be like, what do you mean they don't want to see him? How did you go in? What did you say? So that's, hence, they used to give me the babies, or give me the babies who were dying, so that I could take care of the families and make sure that we began that grief process, or really did an assessment to make certain that the decisions those mommies and daddies were making were truly the decisions that were true to them, by asking specific questions, and that they wouldn't feel, sorry in the long run that they didn't do something, or so that's that, hence that name. So anyway, to make a long story short, I said, okay, I'll interview. And this was she was the director of nursing education, who actually, had this position, and it happened to be her thesis, where she went down to the emergency room. She was on beeper, and she was called for every trauma. And she would minister to the families of these trauma victims. And some of them would go to the operating room of the ICU, and some of them would die. And if they died, actually, she would be there with the family. Mm-hmm. And the COO allowed her to implement her thesis. So she interviewed 16 nurses. And she gave me the job, and I couldn't believe I had the job. And so I knew nothing about adults, okay, except what I learned in nursing school. I knew nothing about trauma, grief, and loss, okay, only what I learned from the neonatal ICU. And I was petrified, but then I became the educator for death and dying for the hospital, because we had annual programs. And then at that time, the Self-Determination Act came out, and all the information on autonomy, how we, allow people to be autonomous in their decision-making. Living wills came out, all of these kinds of things. And so that was my job, to teach the hospital staff an annual program about death and dying. That led me into working with the chaplaincy. And then I worked with all the chaplain interns. and really started to expand the family support service. That's what we called it. And that was a big springboard because what happened was I realized that I couldn't do it by myself. And so chaplaincy was part of this. I also spoke with the pediatric nurses, the ICU nurses. They didn't care for me in the beginning because they said that when my boss, who was the person who implemented the program, would go to the units, she would say, "You're doing this wrong, you're doing that wrong, you should do the," and they thought I was going to do the same. So I brought bagels, and the bagels helped me to get my foot in the door. And then I told them what my vision was for this. And then they started to listen. So it was really a beautiful transformation because we look at the patient and the family. And what I learned from those patients in neonatal ICU and the patients in the trauma room and the families is that it's not what I think they need. They will invite us, just like in coaching, right? They invite us through what they're asking, through what they're doing. They invite the intervention. You see, so it's really co-creating. What kind of experience do you want to have? And is there someone there who can let the ego go, let the nursing knowledge and research go for a few minutes and actively, deeply listen to what their needs are? And that for 14 years, I did that in the hospital. And I have to tell you, it was really a very rewarding job. But there were a lot of changes that took place in that hospital, towards the end of my tenure there. And they were not open to continuing the family support service because they said that it was not a money-making, producer. And so, but what it really saved was a liability and years and years of therapy for families who didn't understand what was happening, and all of a sudden could have someone there. And then it really spread into the nurses in the ICU and so on and so forth, because they began to create spaces, sacred spaces for families. And you'd walk in the ICU back then and you'd see the patient's favorite blanket, or you'd see the patient's church family come and sing around the bedside, or you'd see different objects, sacred objects around the bedside to honor people of different cultures who like to wash the body after, death, to allow that to happen, to teach the staff this is okay, in a controlled, to have a psychologist on board for children who lost parents or grandparents suddenly, to have chaplains come. And then we started our own Kiwanis Club. We were the only Kiwanis Club in a hospital setting where we'd filter money to have a big service at the end of the year for staff and families to come back to around Christmas time. But we would have angel ornaments on a holiday tree, right? And then they'd be able to take that ornament home with them after the holidays. And they knew there was a place where their loved one wasn't forgotten, where staff could grieve, and where there was support through all of these departments. But again, there was a re-engineering, and I was told that I was going to become a patient rep and that I was going to be doing press ganies. And I, at the same time, got an offer from another major tertiary hospital to become a coordinator of a family communication program. It was, in the area, but the reason for that program was, and I didn't know this at the time, organ donation was a big deal back then. It just started where we'd have to mandate to report every, sudden death and so on and so forth. And this other hospital, I won't name it, was very interested in obtaining a CNO for a kidney transplant program, but they wouldn't be granted the CNO because their organ donation rates were extremely low, in the 20s percentile. So they found out that I was working in Nassau County And the consent rates there were very high. And they said, well, why are they so high there? It's very diverse population, so on and so forth. And the reason being was the patients and the families were supported during the time of crisis. So when the staff or physicians had to have a discussion about what to do, what the disease, what their trajectory was, and so on and so forth, they understood better and they were better able to make sound decisions. And most people are altruistic because most people who have folks who, are in a trauma very sudden, they search for meaning and they want meaning. And many of them found solace in saying, yes, if our loved one, couldn't be alive because of this tragedy, perhaps he could give life or she could give life to someone else. So that's why the rates were high. So I went over to that other hospital, started a program there. And certainly over the years, along with another nurse who was amazing, and the consent rates went up. They got their CNO, and then that grant, it was a granted program, so that grant was over, and the hospital decided that they didn't need a program like this anymore. And once again, I was told, "Oh, you'll go to ICU," and I said, no, that's not where I belong right now." So what came along? The stroke coordinator position came along. Now, I did not know anything about stroke. Okay, I did not. I have to, and that was back in the day when TPA was just being, offered. And so that program we built from the bottom up, and it became a big system program, and that was my, my next position. So you can see it's very diverse. I started with babies. In the beginning of life, then the end of life, then trauma. I was in the burn unit there. I was in all through the hospital there. And then now I go to family communication. Again, I'm told it's not needed, second time. Okay. So this was like, but I was able to implement all those things, not just creating stroke and TPA, but the humanitarian component of looking at the whole patient and family. When someone or in your family has a stroke happen to them, what do we do? Okay. What do we do about that? So yes, it was the skill, it was the core measures, it was all of that. But then we created support groups for brain aneurysm, for stroke. There was a stroke club. There was a brain tumor support group. And we worked through all of that. And I became very interested in health literacy at that time because I felt that half the battle was that folks didn't know how to identify stroke. They didn't know about their disease process, that they felt hopeless. And so, you can give them all the education, but most folks can't read above a fourth grade level. Mm-hmm. So I began to serve on a committee for the hospital with this other nurse who started health literacy and really created a lot of education, written education around health literacy. For stroke patients, they did it for the cardiac units. They did it for, I did a whole bereavement booklet. So for the hospital. And, that was very important to me at the time. But this is where I got a little muffled. And this is my journey into coaching. So I went and I was asked to go from that position, the stroke position, to a position in the Office of Health Literacy, Diversity, and became, first I was a project manager, and then I became the director of patient education and health literacy for the system. And that did me in. Mm. And I'll tell you why, looking back. We must follow our Dharma, yes? We must follow the true path. And when we get muffled into all of this stuff, we lose sight of who we are. And that's what happened to me. And I couldn't, the way I live my life and the way I am and the stressors that were in my life did not coordinate or align with what they were asking of me and what they, I guess, wanted to mold me into. I could never be molded, as you know, I always had to be true to me, but there I got a little mixed up, okay? Because, and I wasn't used to system work and all the personalities and the egos and the pressure, and I wasn't used to that. So I got sick, very sick. And I went out on disability and I couldn't get myself together. I was extremely depressed, extremely anxious. I was rolled up into a ball on the couch. Okay. I really didn't think I was going to be a nurse ever again. And a friend of mine, she was a nurse that I used to do some holistic things with as stroke coordinator. And before Code Lavender was a thing, we had a care program where we would do all that kind of work together. And she called me because she knew I was out. And she was basically one of the only ones that called me. And she said to me, I'm having a class at my house. I want you to come. And I said, well, what kind of class are you having? And she goes, well, it's a coaching class. You know, I just became a coach. She was in cohort 1. And for those of you who want to know who this person is, it's Deborah McElligott. And she is my dear friend. And she called me and she lives by the beach. Okay. So it was a beautiful setting. And she had a 1-day class. It's now the fundamentals class that we all taught, you know. And she said, come. And I said, no, I'm done. I'm not going to be a nurse anymore. She goes, no, 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 just come to my house. I'm at the beach. She said, there's going to be like-minded people here. She talks like this, Debbie, you know. And she said, you could bring a friend if you want to come. And this is what she's saying. So I brought my friend Maria and we went to Debbie's house and she was right. The people who were in her house, I felt alive again. We had little conversations, you know, when we practiced active listening and all this stuff in the fundamentals class. And we had lunch and we talked, and I felt a sense of camaraderie. I felt a sense of some kind of feeling that was coming back for me, you know? So I did that. And then Debbie said, you know, the having cohort at Ama House in Manhattan, I'd really love for you to come. She says, you know, I was cohort 1, now we're up to cohort 8, and why don't you come? It's a year program, it's this, it's that. I said, I don't know. She goes, no, just come. So I went. And you know what happens after that, after you go around Barbie and Susan and all the faculty, and you feel like, oh, and you're in, Alma Matthew House, where it was a home from this Methodist minister's wife who took in girls who were in the, turn of the 19th century, 20th century. Yeah. Took in girls because they were being abused and you're in this house with these people who you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. So I go through the coaching program. And a few months after I go through the coaching program, they asked me to become faculty for the program. Hence, going through the coaching program, you don't learn to be a coach, you evolve into a different person, because it's not just a class where you're checking off the boxes. You become a different person. You begin to meditate. You begin to eat better. You begin to be more aware of what you need to work on. You connect yourself with like-minded people. You discern better. And I've been on this journey for almost 10 years, right? So in the middle of this, I'm getting my doctorate in nursing practice. I'm quitting my job. My uncle's dying. My son's getting married. It's all that craziness is happening. But that was like very stable for me, and certainly I had the opportunity to teach all over the country. So that really was great for me, and meet wonderful, wonderful people. throughout this experience. So, you know, that's what I did, and I still do. Don't think it's finished. It's
That's
never
right.
finished,
It's never
this,
finished.
right? And
Right.
I feel so fortunate to have Debbie as my dear friend. We have a whole group of holistic nurses and nurse coaches that meet here in my, area of New York. We're very close. We're like our tribe, right?
Yeah.
And we have this wonderful opportunity to bring forth integrative health, holistic nursing, our spirituality, our interests. I just did a book club on Ram Dass's Path to God, and so many truths in that book as I have taken my journey for all this time, right?
Mhm.
Um, has really, really supported what I'm telling you. You're never finished. And if anybody thinks because you meditate every day or you walk in nature every day that you're all Zen, that is not the case. It's a work in progress forever.
Yeah. You're
I
never finished. That's true.
never finish it.
You're
And
never finished.
no. And
Mm.
I think the only thing is that you cultivate not a need, but it's like you want to be in that sacred space. You want to meditate so that you can connect with spirit or divine or whatever you connect with, and it's just becomes part of your life.
Mhm.
So that's been my journey. I mean, if you have another 6 hours, I could tell you more. And I'm sure every single nurse, every single human being on this earth has a journey like this.
Right.
It's like I call it, I learned about the hero's journey through coaching, right? And yes, you know, um, you go, and then something big happens, and then you try to, re-navigate or reinvent yourself, and then you come out a little better than you were before with more lessons, more experience, and so on. So it's been really a great experience,
Yeah.
so to speak.
Yes, absolutely. And so many wonderful experiences along the way on your journey, and really being witness to what's going on in culture as well as the shifts within healthcare. And really what I got out from really what I took away the most is like remembering to be true to who we are, and
Yes.
how easy it can be to be dissuaded or pulled away from our trueness because we're in systems that want us to do certain things. They want to push us in the direction or mold us, like you said,
Mhm.
trying to do that and turn us and twist us in ways which really don't necessarily always align with what our values and truths are.
Yes.
So I was really connecting with that piece, because I too have felt that. And I see this and witness this on a daily basis in the work that I do in hospitals. So I'm curious to know what kind of advice you would have for nurses who are still working
Mm.
in these systems that may not be supporting their truth, and how they can still align with what they value the most.
Yes. So while you're talking, I'm thinking the word responsibility comes to my mind. And we do go to work in systems, and the system, who we are and who we bring to that position or that environment is extremely important. And I find that many nurses who I've encountered, I've taught also in nursing schools, self-esteem and self-love is a big issue for many, many nurses that I've come in contact with. This feeling of not being good enough, not being enough, hence all the degrees. And they were all fine and dandy, don't get me wrong, but it's never enough. Okay. That I think we need to, before we say, oh, the system pulls me through. The system is trying to mold me. If I was in a different mindset, or if I had the confidence I have now, or the grounding and the knowing that I have now about who I am, I would have never gone through all of that hurt and suffering. So what I would say to anybody, and nurses especially, because we're talking about nurse coaching, is to, if you don't feel like enough, if you feel like you need something more, start talking to someone about why you feel that way. And really cultivate a sense of awareness. And you're not going to find the answer outside yourself. Okay? You're not going to find the answer outside yourself. You're going to have to go inward and find out what is leading me to the decisions that I am making right now that seem to bring me to a place that is uncomfortable or that is not aligned with who my true self is. And I think it starts like Barbie's model, right? Her theory, the I. We must start with ourselves before we can help anyone else. And living proof of this is, I'm going to go back to my story, right? When I became a family support nurse, I had an associate's degree, didn't finish my bachelor's yet. I had no experience in grief and loss except what was in the neonatal intensive care, none, okay? Yet, I felt complete. I felt that even though the job was hard at times and difficult, and I did have a bit of compassion fatigue, don't get me wrong, I felt so sure about what I was doing, what I was saying. I wasn't a coach then. It was almost as if there was this deep knowing inside of me, this soulful knowing that allowed me to deeply listen, to not push people through things. And when I look back with my education now and all that I've been through, I had everything I needed at that time in my life to do that job. And I didn't even realize it. So it's time to pause. We talk about taking the pause, right? Taking the pause in coaching, to put our brakes on, to take a breath, to dig deeper. Are we leading with our mind and our ego, or are we allowing our soul and the multidimensional being that we were created to be lead the rest of us? That is the question. And the soul must lead. We need to invite our soul back into our bodies, and the soul will inform the rest. That is my philosophy. That's why I say to you, you asked me how I would like you to introduce me. Yes, all these degrees at one time was so important because I said to myself, well, maybe if I have this, then they'll accept me. Maybe if I do that, no, this is it. And whatever I am, I am. And whatever I've learned from my own experience, I've learned. And whatever I have to learn now for the rest of my life, then I will learn. And I will bring myself to wherever I'm needed. And that's it. That's it. It's simple.
I love the simplicity.
Took me almost 70 years to get to this. No, it's not easy, but at least I'm feeling like I'm starting to get it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm starting to get it,
Well, and you've said, you're never finished. We're never finished.
No.
And you're still at this point of all of this experience, elevating yourself to truly understand yourself at this point.
Yes, that's true. It took me long enough, don't you think?
Well, we're all on this journey, girl. There's a lot.
I know.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's kind of it in a nutshell. And I think if there is a nurse who sees this, who doesn't know what coaching is, it's not just another certification or degree. It's you live it, you begin to live it, and it really helps you to find yourself, find your soul, find your purpose, be comfortable in your own skin, to stand up to anybody who tries to tell you different.
Yeah, it's definitely more than just the check boxes of, yes, this is motivational interviewing, and these are the questions that you can ask to, get the client to ponder deeper into themselves. It's way more than that. It is those things too.
Yes. And that's important to learn, to always be, but the conference we just went to out in Miami, which was lovely for anybody who wants a great conference next time.
Yes, the Integrative Nurse Coach Symposium in Miami, Florida, which our last two podcast releases, 72 and 73, are reflections from that time. So if you haven't listened to those episodes, I'll put those in the show notes. I also wanted to bring back Deb McElligott too, because she's been a guest on this podcast too. She's episode number 56. How to Take Nurse Coaching Anywhere is the title of that.
Absolutely. She's good for that.
Yeah, I'm going to put that into the show notes too. So we'll have all those resources. So tell us about the conference, or what you want to bring up from the conference.
So what I want to tell you about the conference is I've seen so many young nurses who were actually presenting, and there was one in particular, I forget her name, but she was doing the bowls.
Oh, Chelsea. Yes.
And Chelsea was speaking, and then she did the singing bowls for us, which was beautiful. But when she was speaking, I began to tear up. And here she was, this beautiful, vibrant, not, a seasoned but young nurse, right? Younger than me anyway, at least probably half my age. And she was so wise. What she was saying, she learned so young. And so and I was just listening to her, and I was welling up, and I was saying, it's working. It's working. It's happening. They're getting it. Because the saddest thing for me, even as an adjunct faculty for a nursing program, was to see everybody so stuck. How will they learn? How will they? And here she was at a young age. So after she did her singing bowls, I went up to her. She didn't know me, and I don't know her personally. But I hugged her and I said, you don't know me, but what you said was beautiful. Your singing bowls are beautiful, and I am so proud of you. And we both teared up, and I just felt so close to, it was such a gift. That's what I want to say. So that's my hope for all nurses, that you get it. You finally get it, and you feel comfortable in your own skin, and you don't have to make excuses for who you are or what you do. You are enough. Just the way you are. Just the way you are.
Yeah. No more excuses.
No more excuses. I know. It's a lot.
I just needed to take a breath and bring it all in.
I know, it's a lot. I know, but that's how I feel. So I'm telling you the truth.
Yes. And we appreciate hearing your truth, and that you are courageous enough to share the truth, your truth.
Thank you.
So in thinking of our younger nurses, and even our older, I'm putting this in quotations if you're listening just on the podcast, older.
More mature. No.
Mature. Yes, mature. Because I fit into that boat too. Just thinking of the nurses who may be struggling at this point in their time and as a nurse, and being moms, dads, aunts, uncles, tragedies happening, things changing, roles being pulled out from under them, and voluntold to go into other positions. what is some advice that you could give them?
So when I decided to leave the health system, it was a very difficult decision for me because I felt like one of those nurses, those folks who you're talking about. But the thing I kept saying was, oh my God, I have a family. Oh my gosh, I can't leave this job with this money. Oh my, I can't. And I kept trying to make it work, trying to make it work, trying to make it work. And I got sicker and sicker. I decided what's more important to me. I'm a nurse. I could get a job anywhere. I mean, you can. It might not be the job that you have now, but if something is making you sick, you need to let go of it. You will find a way. Since I left, I didn't need the four walls of a healthcare organization to be a nurse. That's what I learned. Okay. I could step outside of that dysfunction and I could be a nurse anywhere. Okay. Anywhere. There is nursing is a diverse profession. You could find another way that better aligns with who you are. Doesn't have to be in a system. And coaching is a perfect thing because many of our colleagues have their own practice. Okay. I know some colleagues who are going into systems to try to make a difference there. So, there are so many different aspects of nursing. And don't think that you have to stay if it's making you sick. You do not have to stay if it's making you sick. Take a breath, maybe take some time off to figure out what you want in your career and what kind of folks do you want to work with? What kind of an environment do you want? Now, yes, there's always going to be stress in any work environment, but it's what can we live with? And also I think it helps to, cultivate, a wellness program or a well-being program, right, for self, so that you can better, develop your emotional intelligence or better develop your tolerance or see things as an observer and not feel like, you're emotionally involved in them, and see things objectively. So there are a lot of little components to what I'm saying to nurses who feel stuck.
Mm-hmm.
It's about putting a program of well-being into place for self. It's about really, I bet you if I asked some of these folks who are going through this, what do you want? They've forgotten what they want.
Mm.
They're so used to having to be on that wheel, the gerbil wheel,
Yeah.
that you say, what do you want? What do you love? What brings you joy? What brings you joy? What do you want to do in 1 year, 3 years, and 5 years? What's your vision for yourself? We've lost all that. And I'm living proof that I'm still standing. I still own my house. You know, I you know, I'm still standing after leaving that position before retirement. Okay, so I found a way, to make a living. I also, started a business, and I just made it work, but there's always a way out. But you have to do a bit of work so that you really come up with a plan as to what you want in your life. How do you want to live? How do you want to be? Who do you want to work with? What brings you joy? And these are the things that are important.
Yeah. Coming back to the I.
Yes.
Right. We have to do some of the hard work of looking at ourselves and asking those hard questions and then listening to the answers.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, really implementing. And if you can't, I mean, sometimes you need help. And, while I was going through this, many of my nurse colleagues, like I said, we created a little tribe, right, of like-minded nurses. And we do healing circles together and things like this. Find a tribe, find like-minded folks who feel as you do and figure out, come together and support one another. That's really important to have that support.
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely. Yes. And if, going to those offerings that people have out there, like there are so many things that we can tap into in our communities. And often offerings are, people don't come.
No.
And there's choices to be made for ourselves, and we can make those choices.
Absolutely. And I think what happens is they feel so overwhelmed that they say, I can't do another thing. And that other thing might be a wellness program, or perhaps learning to meditate, or, whatever it is. I mean, I know you do a lot of programs. What I would suggest is just try it a couple of times. Just try it. I mean, if there's a healing circle for nurses, try it. It's out there. It's there for you. Yeah. And they're not the only one. Don't think you're the only one that's going through this, because you're not the only one. It's like the pink elephant in the room. Nobody's talking about it. But it's there. It's there.
Yes.
And it's okay. It's okay. It's okay to be vulnerable. That's how you begin to heal.
Yes. I really do appreciate that reminder that you're not the only one. I have suffered. I continue to feel suffering and sorrow and sadness. And, and sometimes you look around and you think, oh, everybody's got their schmack together. Yes. I'm the only one who's not handling this well. And yet we're all human and all experiencing emotions on different levels. And we're not the only one.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes. Well said. It's true. It's true.
Yes. So in our last few moments, I love to ask this question. What is on your heart that you would like to share with our listeners?
Well, first of all, I feel very grateful that I have the opportunity to share some of my experiences. And my hope is that whoever listens to this gets something out of it. Maybe they're at the beginning of their journey, maybe they're the middle or the end. I don't know. There's never an end, though. But I hope they would consider some of the things we've spoken about and really see how those things that we spoke about pertain to them. Where can they begin their journey for healing, mind, body, and soul? Their awareness journey, whatever you want to call it. That's what's, and for me, that's the soft spot in my heart, because when I became a nurse, all the way back, I was like 36 years old when I became a nurse, right? And when I went to my graduation, I felt complete. I felt complete in a different way than other aspects of my life. It was different than having my children, that was pure joy, right? Or being married, that was joyful. But there was a completeness that I felt. And I carried that completeness into the neonatal ICU with me, because I didn't have any experience yet. I wasn't tainted. I was just wide-eyed and right. I hope that for them. I hope that they can continue to be wide-eyed, curious, and cultivate a sense of well-being for themselves first. Always put yourself first. We were told differently, and then bring whatever joy, whatever happiness, whatever you cultivate within yourself, bring it into those rooms in the hospitals where it is so desperately needed. The light. And for those of you who won't work in a system, you can bring yourself wherever you go.
Mm.
Remember that. It could be in a supermarket, it could be outside, it could be anywhere. You are the office. You know what I'm saying? You are the organization. You are whatever it is that you want to, you are it.
You are it.
Yeah. So that's it. That's what I would say.
Mm.
And I hope I get to see it, just like I saw it that day at the symposium.
Mm.
Those moments are so pure joy. So yeah, made me happy.
Mm. Thank you for sharing. Mm.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for the opportunity to share.
Mm. Yes. So if someone is looking for you, what's the best way they could reach out to you?
So, probably email.
Okay. And
Right now, my email is jt2355@gmail.com. Probably in the next month or so, I'm going to change my email, but I'll still keep that one. And then whoever reaches out to me, I'll give them my new email because that email's blowing up. No.
time to move on.
Time to move to a different email. So, but for now, that would be a good thing.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for spending time with all of us today and for sharing your beautiful wisdom and inspiration with us. And just can't thank you enough.
Oh, you're very, very welcome. It's my pleasure. Thank you so much.